Hello and welcome to Pop Not Pop. I am artist and producer Rookes, and today will be the first episode where I will talk about a song that I'm currently writing for the first full-length Rookes album. As I mentioned in my previous episode, I am writing pop music from the perspective of someone who doesn't really like a lot of the pop music being made at the moment, but has enjoyed pop music in the past. Actually, in this regard, we are starting with an unusual song because it is not about a romantic or sexual entanglement, which is unusual for my music and for pop music in general. Most of the time I'm happy to write about my entanglements because it's an easy reach. I often have a lot of feelings to give expression to. And then it broke my heart. Like so many musicians before me. But no. This song isn't about that, which puts it squarely outside of my comfort zone, and that's rarely a bad thing. This song is called Bad Code, and it's about, drumroll please, the patriarchy. Don't switch off! There is more. When I say the patriarchy, I mean something that affects more people than just cis women. Yes, I identify as a cis woman, in case you were wondering, but what I'm talking about is the systems of power and belief in our world that oppress people, particularly minorities in terms of gender, race, orientation, and many other aspects. But it goes much further than that. Patriarchy raises up the interests of some at the expense of others by use of codes of presentation and behaviour. So my experience that I'm writing about in a song is that, yes, I am an able-bodied, cis, white woman, which in my society affords me certain privileges and protections. But I am a woman that does not fit into what I perceive society is telling me that an able-bodied white cis woman should be. I have never been comfortable complying with the codes of behaviour and presentation expected of me as a woman. When I was younger, this expressed itself as likes and dislikes. I liked dresses, but only because they were easier to climb trees in. I liked science fiction. I liked exploring. I liked geology. And by God, did I like dinosaurs. Once I grew up, if I spoke up in a business meeting for the same amount of time as a man would speak, I would be perceived as talking too much. I was too physically strong, too loud, too fat, too brainy, too pale, too active, too sweaty, too sensitive, too crude. The list goes on and on. None of these are actually true, by the way. I am fine, just as I am. But the way people treated me over the years gave me the impression that I was always wrong. The message I got from the world was, you're stepping out of line. Sit down and shut up. And you know what? I tried to do that. Over the years, I tried to please other people. I tried to bend myself to the shapes that they seemed to want, just to give myself an easier life. But the problem was it didn't work because people who demand that you bend to them will never be pleased. Now, all my songs start with lyrics because I write lyrics almost every day. I love words. Words are my jam. So when I talk about writing a song, what I'm really talking about is stringing together fragments that I have already written on a similar theme. In this case, I wrote the first lines of Bad Code weeks before sitting down to write the song properly. The day I felt pushed to write it, I recall I was pretty furious about the way that someone had treated me that day because of my gender, which isn't that unusual, sadly, but apparently some fury had been accumulating. I was working for a music technology company at the time and frequently discussing the design of software. So it seems like my subconscious latched onto the idea of coding and programming, even though I can't do either of those things myself. Plus the idea of codes of behaviour that I'd already mentioned. So the first lines of Bad Code are, there's bad code in the system. You can see it in my eyes. I have to rewrite myself again to stay alive. Oftentimes I just improvise a tune to the lyrics that I've written, so I had a go at doing that on a voice note on my phone. Then I jumped on my keyboard block and worked out a chord progression that fit with the key and the melody I was playing. More from this guy in the next episode. Then I pulled some more lyrics out of the pool that I had written lately and just started to play with other imagery that fit the feeling of the song. I didn't want to avoid writing about how the problem of the patriarchy affected me, rather than just describing the problem itself. So these were the following lines that I landed on. I feel the lines that make my form. I focus on my breath. Which is actually me describing the way that I handle a panic attack, which is through touch and breath control. Next, I wrote, with every fire, I wonder if I'm pure enough for you yet. Now, this is a bit of an obscure reference, I'll admit, and it harks back to when I used to work for the church. Ding, ding, ding! Past life story that I'll share another time. In retrospect, I recognise now that when I was younger and I was dealing with pain of some serious trauma, I would go to some church leaders looking for help and guidance. And sometimes they would just want me to be quiet and go away. So rather than figuring out how to care for and support a person in distress, they would fob me off with pat answers like, "Oh, God is refining you in the fire. What the heck does that even mean?" Thanks for the obscure silversmithing Bible reference, but that wasn't ultimately comforting or helpful. So that went in two, and that was the end of verse 1. Now, there is a growing understanding in the music industry and in other industries that those who are not cis, white, straight, able-bodied and male get the shit end of the stick a lot of the time. We get shoehorned, bullied, passed over for opportunities, unless you're prepared to play by certain rules. Which, let's face it, I rarely am. So when I got to the chorus, these lyrics really stood out from the lyric pool. I can't get what I want because I don't need fixing. I can't get what I want until the glass is raining down. This is a direct reference to the metaphor of the glass ceiling, usually in economics and industry, which represents the invisible barrier of prejudice and patriarchy that prevents minorities from progressing to higher levels of success, achievement, and power. Because heaven forbid we manage to achieve positions that would enable us to change the system. So in the final words of the chorus, I can't get what I want, and yet I keep on working till I get what I want. So that is the beginning of Bad Code. Tune into next week's episode for Bad Code Part 2, where we'll be looking at the development of this song from a music production perspective, going bigger, darker, and more synth-driven than I ever have so far. If you have thoughts or questions, don't forget to drop them in the comments below, but don't forget, play nice, be polite. I have been Rookes, and this has been Pop Not Pop. Stay away from auto-tune. Bye!